the president of Mahdi back in Kenya.
Yes.
Kenya was having a huge problem with its oil export. It was very expensive to import oil.
Yes.
The Iranian government gave a suggestion that Kenya can come and buy oil from Iran and talk from on a basis of government to government to make it much cheaper, because we procure ours from the market, but we are buying it from middlemen. People who don't even have oil. So we buy from, that's why by the time it gets here, it's too expensive for us, because the middlemen put out of markups. So there was a suggestion that Kenya can negotiate directly with the government of Iran, and then that will make it, Dr. Zigo, as a diplomat who understands the geopolitics, how is it possible for Kenya to be able to sidestep the sanctions and be able to talk to the government of Iran directly in order to be able to lessen this burden of the bill?
It's very unfortunate what has happened over the years, because I remember under the regime of President Moi, there was a lot of interaction between Kenya and Iran. There were a lot of delegations that used to go to Iran, and of course Iranian delegations that used to come to Kenya, including the exhibitions at the International Conference Center, especially in the areas of technology, manufacturing, cars and all that. And the Chamber of Commerce was very active. And at that time, there were quite a number of activities, especially issues of oil exportation from Iran and the goodwill that Iran had towards us. Unfortunately, because of international politics and of course international pressure, we tended to shy away from critical areas that would have benefited us. And I look forward to the current regime in terms of diversification. We've now gone to China. I think we should go back to Iran. And also, you only get respected if you speak the truth at the international level, at the UN. You defend the rights, because what is affecting Iran tomorrow will affect us also. Because if one wants to forestall development, especially scientific, health, and technology that is benefit for the mankind, we are also thinking about nuclear technology. And I remember we're very active in Vienna, and there has been in the last few years attempts to try and adopt nuclear technology for the benefit of Kenya and mankind. And this project would have benefited immensely from the experience of Iran. And I remember Professor Shaukat, you used to be at the university here in Nairobi, Kajiado, is very passionate about this technology, and now is also part of the international body in Vienna, and I've talked to him several times on these issues, and he's very passionate. And I think that is one area, if we are serious about development, that we can learn a lot from Iran.
Dr. Dukra, I'll come to you. Because there's a special part I want for you. But in the meantime, let me go to Dr. King. Yourself having been living in Iran 1 month is long enough to know the nuts and bolts, the good and bad, with these resources that Iran has. The subject of this time. What in your view, as a scholar, how can these resources be unlocked so that more of the people who are and people who can actually benefit maximum from them?
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I've been in Iran 4 times. The first one a month, and the other. What we're trying to say is that I think Iran, with what they have done a lot. And that's why I was saying Kenyan politicians could go and study in Iran, even if it's 1 week, see what's happening. Because I think there are no Iranians who are dying of hunger. Whereas in Kenya we have rivers, we have everything, and there are times people in Kenya die of hunger here. Some people are very rich, some others are very poor. But when you look at the issue of the difference and the margin between the rich and the poor in Iran, it's very minimal, not like in Kenya. Looking also at infrastructure, as my chairman, Ambassador Zibo, has said, looking at what is talking of the issue of controlling the traffic, you look at one of the tallest monuments in the world is in Iran, and you see that these people take advantage of those things. So what I'm trying to say is that I think the world, what they should do, especially the Western countries, they should stop the sanctions against Iran. Of course, the sanctions are good. For Iran, they are good, because what I've always told many politicians who are my friends is that when you go to Iran and you look at anything you see in Iran, you are sure that 80% is Iranian made, including Mercedes, including Volvo, it's Iran made. Whereas in Kenya, we have everything, but we export, we are so, you know, we export raw materials like cotton, sisal to other countries. Then those countries produce those things, then sell those the processed materials to us times 20 or times 30 of what we sold them. A good example is coffee. We sell coffee to other countries, the Western countries. They go process coffee. Maybe my grandmother sells coffee for only 120 per kilogram. But when the coffee comes back to me, I cannot buy even 10 grams for 100 shillings. Now, when you look at Iran, you realize that everything is Iran made, and everything they do it from their own resources, with their own resources. 3 months back, I was in Iraq for the Arba'in of Imam Khomeini. And you realize that things you see there, most of them are Iran made also. I've been to Lebanon. You see everything. What I'm trying to say is that Iran, even with the sanction, is supporting more than 10 countries in the world. Fully support. I'm talking about fully support, where you see the Iranian presence. And when you also talk of that, you realize that it's supporting even other countries. So what I'm trying to say is that it should be upon the countries of the world to stand with Iran to say that the sanctions against Iran should be stopped, because when the sanctions against Iran are stopped, their currency will go up. Because you see, the sanction, one of the things they affect is the sanctions. Just like when Zimbabwe had sanctions, you realize that a dollar could go even for like 1,000 or 10,000, the currency of the other country. So that sanction, if it's done away with, you realize that the currency will work, and when the currency works, then other things could be better. The other thing is that those countries which are ready to collaborate with Iran should not be criminalized by anyone in this world. There should be freedom of association with anyone. You know, that's why we are saying, for example, my professor from the University of Nairobi was talking of a theocracy which is better than many democracies, better by far than many democracies. So we are talking of the same thing. Of course, you don't want to collaborate or even have any cooperation with Iran. But when we want that cooperation, allow us to have it. My chairman have talked, we asking the question of the oil, which we were to get for a cheaper by far from other countries. But we were stopped from doing so. So what we are trying to say is that we would like those countries which have a problem with Iran, if they want to, then let them continue the problem with Iran. But they should not force other countries to have problem with Iran for the prosperity of those countries. Thank you.
Let me say this. So long as the dollar remains the main currency of international trade, these sanctions will continue to harm Iran. So maybe the best way then is to move away from the dollar. I know it's a tall order, to maybe the euro, because we know that sanctions are harming Iran, especially with regard to the oil industry, shipping, insurance, and all that. So that would be my suggestion to the.
Yes, I even do remember that discussion at this very time when Iran was suggesting that international trade, especially in the oil market, they should move from the dollar and maybe try the euro. Your Excellency, I'm sure, so far, after seeing that suggestion was made, anything that, have we had any progress on that area?
Sorry.
You know that European Union have been trying to create a special vehicle for getting rid of US dollar in international transaction with Iran. Actually, the monopoly of US dollar in the international market created a very good leverage for the United States to put pressure on the other countries without paying anything, without any expense, just using only the monetary mechanism, which is dollar. Now, it's not only Iran, even the European Union, China, and Russia, and India, and even countries like South Africa, they understood it's very dangerous that US dollar dominated international transaction and market. And they have to get away from that. The first step has been initiated by European Union. It takes time to be completed, but in the new vehicle mechanism that we agreed with the European Union, all transaction by Iranian companies with the European Union companies will be done by euro. We started the same mechanism with Russia. We will do all transaction with Russia in ruble, with China in yuan. Even with Iraq, yesterday our chairman of central bank announced that with Iraq they have reached an agreement to pay in our own currency. With Turkey, we started to transact in lira and real. And therefore, I think it takes time, but the international community understood that domination of dollar over the international transaction and trade is very dangerous, and they have to get away from that. And this initiative has been started, hopefully with the European Union, and then the European Union promised that other countries in the world in the next step or next stage can use the same mechanism. For instance, for example, even at the next step, Kenya can use the same mechanism for exchange with Iran. That issue, it's not only the national interest of Iran, it is international interest. All the country think it is very necessary to find other mechanism rather than dollar.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I want to move to the next item, the best ranks of Iran in the area of education. You can see all those science, engineering, and for now, let me make a disclosure. I agree. When I was in Iran, I was surprised that, in fact, majority. I went to several universities, and the highest enrollment in science subjects are women. And when I asked that, why do you have so many women in the universities and doing the sciences, they told me the war, the 9-year war between Iran and Iraq taught Iranians one thing, that during war, the men got the front line. And if you go to war, there is you don't know if you'll come back. You can die on the battlefield. So they feel that the economy can only be, the women are the ones who stood behind to hold the economy. So they feel that if we educate the women, even if all the men are annihilated in war, Iran will still stand. And that's why many women are enrolled in universities. Now, Dr. Gakuria, you studied in Iran. You went to study medicine in Iran. People usually go to Johns Hopkins, Harvard, everywhere. Why Iran? And can you tell us the education system and the areas of sciences, of which one, the medical field is one of them. What did you find about Iran? And what is your view about the quality and the quantity of education in Iran?
Thank you very much. And, Your Excellency, and Mr. Moklesian, the Cultural Counselor, I take this opportunity to apologize for my coming late. I know according to Iranian culture and tradition, it is almost an abomination to be late for an appointment. And for that, I say I'm sorry at my personal level. Yes. And there are several points before I say a point of my own. It is clear that I'm a living testimony that Iran, or the Islamic Republic of Iran, after the revolution, made sure that people of all countries, not just Muslim communities or Muslim countries, especially the poor countries, should be able to benefit from their own human resource. That explains the reason for me and 21 others, my age mates, who were offered the scholarship to go to Iran to study through Imam Khomeini International University to meet this objective of the Iranian Revolution, that all poor countries, all poor people of this world should be able to have an education and should be able to have a human resource that is going to serve their own countries independently. So for that, I'm a living testimony. And it's true, human resource development, as Excellency the Ambassador has said, in Iran it has been one of the key areas of the revolution. A good example is the nanotechnology. Now, because I'm a medical doctor, nanotechnology for me boils back to nanomedicine. I'm a graduate of the Shiraz University of Medical Sciences, and when I was graduating there, the then Minister for Health and Medical Education was our own professor. He was the chairman of the gastroenterology department at Namazi Hospital. That's a teaching and referral hospital. And he was appointed the Minister for Health and Medical Education. And in the same year which I was graduating, Shiraz was designated by the leader of the Islamic Revolution as the center where nanotechnology was going to be developed in Iran. Now, unfortunately, that was the time when I was graduating, and I did not directly benefit from that project. But I'm sure, as you have heard from the head of the Cultural Council, that's an area that is being pursued effectively in Iran. And industrial development in terms of medical services. I was in Iran for 10 years. From the time I just was able to just say hi and goodbye in Farsi until I was speaking Farsi fluently. Still, I can't write that fluently, but I think I know what I'm saying when I say in terms of technology, medical technology, everything we used in the university, from the lecture halls to theater rooms, to emergency centers, ICU, and that is 10 years ago. 80 to 95% was made in Iran. That is the medical equipment and technology. That's thanks to the revolution and the sanctions. And
In your view, what they do, what is the issue of government? You think the governance structure of the country is what has assisted this kind of achievement?
it is in two parts. Because in Iran, when you're a guest, you don't get to be confined in government offices or institutions. You get to be invited. The Iranian people are very friendly and they love guests. So you get to be invited to go to the villages and you live with them. So that effort, it is a double-sided effort. There is the government policy, and then there is what they call Jombeshe Mardumi. The people themselves are driven toward growth. That one I can attribute it to those two factors. So, and it's true. Of course, when you have roads, when you have airports, when you have a working airline that has been in existence, working perfectly despite sanctions, when you have ports that are effective, and when you have all those industries growing up despite the revolution, then it is just fair that other countries will be allowed to relate with you independently. So that I know, maybe for us it's going to be, for the Iranians, it is a disadvantage that their money, when it comes to the international market, they cannot buy a lot. But for us, it's an advantage. So in terms of medical tourism, for example, if I have to go for liver transplant in Shiraz, which was, okay, when at that time that I was in Shiraz, it was the only center for liver transplantation in the Middle East and the region. But that time it was led by the good Professor Malik Husseini. If I go to Shiraz for liver transplant, and I know $1 is 1,000, even if they tell me it is 2 million, 2 months to do the liver transplant, as a Kenyan, it's going to be far much cheaper than if I go to South Africa, or if I go to India or Pakistan, or even the Western countries, or even if I do it from Nairobi. Okay, our professors are here and they can testify that it is going to be cheaper for people to travel to Iran for treatment than to receive it here. Yes, you get the value for money, you are sure of the technology, world-class technology. So as a country, we should not shy away from associating independently with Iran. Other professors or other members of this sitting were suggesting the lifting of the Iranian sanctions. That one can be done piecemeal by individual countries agreeing. Another area in trade, if I'm not to talk about medicine, trade. Just today I was reading the Business Daily. For today's Business Daily, as I was taking my coffee, that coffee was not made in Kenya, and one sachet was 100 bob. You know the kind of sachet that you just make a cup of coffee?
It's 5 grams.
It's 5 grams. It was 100 bob. It is made outside there. And in that daily, they were writing that the auction in Mombasa port, the tea auction in Mombasa port, has been hit by the sanctions against Iran, because as much as Iran would want to buy double the amount of tea that is buying from Kenya right now, making those transactions for the banks in Iran through the banks in Kenya is a hurdle. The banks are shying away. So that's why even we grow our own tea, but we cannot sell it to our friends, because some people want their own banks to buy this, to facilitate the buying of the tea, so that their own countries can buy the tea and process it and sell it back to us. So it is upon the Kenyan people, through their own initiative, because it is the people that make the government, right, to lift this ban so that they can benefit from trade, from medicine, from technology. And believe you me, we are going to need Iran's experience in many things, including, like right now, we know Kenya is like having a boom of discovering mineral resources, several mineral resources. There is the oil in Turkana, there is the titanium in Kwale, and it's dotted all over the country. There is gold in Western. So it is just natural that we are going to suffer the same punishment that Iran is going through because of having our own God-given resources. So we could learn, just like terrorism. In Kenya 10 years ago, if you talked about terrorism, nobody knew what it was. Iran has suffered from terrorism since the revolution. It is the one single country that has suffered most from terrorism, both from insurgents and from state terrorism. So if 10 years ago we could learn from Iran and take that experience, maybe right now we would have been at a better place to deal with terrorism. So let's not shy away. Now terrorism has affected us and we have minerals. We know more is coming. Let's go there for the benchmarking. Not only politicians, as Dr. Hassan has said, even medical doctors, lecturers, agriculturalists. Iran is now self-sufficient. Okay, when I say now, like 10 years ago, it was self-sufficient in wheat, which is the staple food of Iran. 10 years ago, because of such programs that people like His Excellency, Mr. Rafsanjani, started Jihad-e Kishavarzi. That was an agricultural revolution that put Iran in self-sufficiency for wheat, and it was going to be self-sufficient in sugar. Those are two commodities which Iran uses most. And. So even agriculturists can do a benchmarking there. So it is just quite natural that we should allow students to go and study in Iran. They'll be better than me, believe me, because now the technology there is better and the education is more experienced. Yes, and the revolution has stabilized so many things like infrastructure, because I used to travel by bus from maybe Tehran to Shiraz 14 hours. But right now I'm very sure, just from International University Imam Khomeini to Tehran, we used to take so many hours. But right now you can go to Karaj and use the metro to Tehran. So that's a good advantage that, believe you me, those are the good things that they were there 10 years ago. Gentlemen here have been in Iran most recently. I'm sure I will go there one of these days. But as I conclude, learn from me. Yes, and and send everybody to Iran to benchmark on their specific area of either study or life or art or science, technology, and come back home and implement.
Good afternoon, everybody. I have a question which I think is more or less related to everybody in this platform, but given the fact that we have Professor Hassan here, who is a lecturer of religious studies and is quite experienced in the matters of ethics and morality, I would like to raise a concern here that I've been thinking about throughout this session today. Given the imperialist and expansionist tendencies that we have been witnessing from the global powers, including the USA, towards other countries of the world, and especially African countries, and creating proxy governments out of these African countries, I wanted to ask, is there any ethical structure that regulates Kenya's foreign policy in a direction that can actually resist certain ways in which policies are imposed, and actually could engage in partnership with countries that are actually under the pressure and under the hostilities that is shown by these global powers? Is there any moral or ethical background that can actually enforce Kenya's foreign policy towards a different or a new direction that may be slightly different from those of the past? Thank you.
I'm sure all of us have got I would first and foremost give that ask Dr. Zibo to start, and then Dr. Kinyua, Dr. Ngugwa, I'm sure the rest of will follow in that order.
Thank you. I'm a retired diplomat. Been out of the diplomacy for the last 15 years, 10 years to 15 years. But I've been following changes in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And if I was to advise our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, like what I noticed when I first served in the Netherlands, is you need a think tank. That independent think tank that directs and advises the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and government on foreign policy. And I think Ambassador Monica Juma has tried and bring people on board to receive advice, but this is yet to be refined. There are a number of think tanks which have now come up in Nairobi, and I'm hoping this would add value to our foreign policy and define. If you go to the website of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, you will find a policy towards foreign policy towards different regions, and the push towards economic diplomacy, but also based on our values drawn from our constitution. In fact, those are the issues that have been raised in our own constitution about morality and also national values that we pride in. And it would be very good if we were to input those national values in our foreign policy. And unfortunately, I'm not an advisor to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but I'm hoping that with the new trend, and especially what has happened recently, with the recent unwanted attacks on Kenya, if you notice, we were just a footnote in that coverage. But if this thing had happened in the West, only one life had been lost. There would have been hue and cry, especially from CNN, which is very unfortunate. And I think with the digital technology and privatization of the media, and including private televisions, these are some of the issues that we should be raising. Because foreign policy is a product of your own cultural values, your own national interests. You know, issues that touch you and also touch you internationally. Issues that differentiate from one nation to another. And I want to draw an example from the late Nelson Mandela in South Africa, when he was asked why he supported a close relationship when he first went to the U.S. And unfortunately, I was in the U.S. also as ambassador. You know, Nelson Mandela was never given a national, what do you call, a state visit, because he was one of the people that had been blacklisted. Our own president, Mwai Kibaki, when I was there, was given a national visit because of the links that we had with the State Department and Office of the President of the United States. But I think we as Kenyans need to influence our own foreign policy. We are very dormant in that we don't look at our constitution, our national values, and try to put pressure through professional think tanks, through people's advocacy, the way we do with human rights issues internally. We should also translate that into international arena. In fact, our stand at the national, the international level, whether at the UN and other international agencies, including African Union, should reflect on our national values. Thank you.
Let me start with the...
Let me hand over.
Your hand over.
Thank you so much for that question, my brother. I think in Kenya, the first thing we need to realize, as far as we talk of the moral and ethical background which should lead us as Kenyans, is our own constitution. Our own constitution is very, very key in this. And in fact, when you look at the first, after the preamble, the first chapter in our constitution talks of the sovereignty of the constitution and also the power of the people of Kenya. But unfortunately, we don't practice this. And I'll give an example. You know, Dr. Gakuria, when you're speaking of the head of the School of Medicine and the rest, the Minister of Education, Minister of Health, you're talking of someone who has been a lecturer in the School of Medicine being the Minister in Health, someone who has been a Chancellor of the University being a Minister of Education, someone who has been a Minister of Agriculture being the Minister of Agriculture. So what we're trying to see is that in those countries, people take leadership on what they are experts in. But you know, it's only in Africa, unfortunately, especially our country, where you'll go take a farmer who has never gone to school and make him a Minister of Education. Those are some of the problems we are seeing. What I'm trying to say is that our constitution is our guide in this. And when you look at chapter 4 in the rights and fundamental freedoms, you see that especially Article 27 is talking of equality and freedom from discrimination. What we're trying to say is that as a country, we are equal like any other country in the world. And we are not supposed to be discriminated upon by collaborating or cooperating with any country of the world. So that's where we can take the moral and ethical background. When you look at our constitution also, and you look at Article 36, it talks of freedom of association. When it talks of freedom of association, it talks of freedom of association for Kenyans themselves and also for our country to any other country. We have the freedom. But unfortunately, we as Kenya especially, it's as if we have another ear somewhere. Our constitution says this, but when someone else tells us something else, we don't look at what our constitution says. So I think the first is Kenyans understanding their constitution, understanding their freedom, and then start working from there. And this, for example, if we agreed to go by what we had with Kibaki on the oil, we could be very far. If we agreed to work under what came that time on the nuclear energy in Kenya, we could be very far as far as technology is concerned. But the problem is that we don't focus on our constitution, we listen to other people from outside. And I think it's time Kenyans should stand up and start looking at their own constitution and start working on their own constitution and also unite with other Africans. Africans should unite. When Africa unites, then we'll take ourselves from a lot of the problems. You know, there's one person who said that leaders of the world or people of the world unite, for you have nothing to lose but Karl Marx, when he was talking about how people should unite. You know, we have nothing to lose as Africans if you unite but slavery. We will only lose slavery, which we are ready to lose. So Africans should unite, come up with the unity in Africa, and we begin from Kenya. You always begin from somewhere. So let us Kenya, we Kenyans should start working on what favors us and not listen to people so much. And if they have an alternative, for example, if you tell us not to buy oil for $1 a barrel, then sell us that oil for 1 barrel $1. But don't tell us not to buy 1 barrel per dollar and you go and sell us the same oil for $10 US. That is not right. Thank you.
Maybe now I can say something. I think Iran itself can, in its own way, influence foreign policy of other countries by opening up to these other countries, this border, so that other people from different countries, especially in Africa, can visit Iran and see exactly what is happening in Iran. Because much of what we know about Iran is through the Western media. That way, people will be able to maybe talk to the politicians and influence policy at that level. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to close this session because we are pressed for time. In closing, I just want to give each and every panelist 1 minute to say something, their concluding remarks. And as you speak about your concluding remarks, put in mind the fact that what you call the elephant in the room. Iran is certainly one of the top military powers in the country, in the world. And all the problems that even the sanctions have been blamed on the idea that Iran is a militaristic power and it's a destabilizing factor in other places. I want us to, as we conclude and also touch on that each and every 1 minute each, I'll start with His Excellency. The question is Iran a danger to world international security?
No, Iran has not invaded any country in more than 200 years. Although in recent 200 years, Iran has been invaded by several countries, including Turkey, Iraq, Britain, Russia, United States, but Iran never invaded any country. Iran develops its own army for its own security and as a defensive army. It's not intention of Iran to invade or occupy any country.
Thank you very much.
I think when we talk of Iran, we have to look at Iran from a different narrative. There's been so much negative propaganda against Iran, but it's not working. I've never seen or heard at the international human rights bodies where Iran has been sanctioned. Of course, you hear here and there you cry, which is natural in every country. But Iran uses its own technology, uses its military power, and uses nuclear technology for the benefit of mankind. And this is very much influenced by the long-lasting civilization that goes back years and years, centuries and centuries, which influences its policy and its vision and the outlook of the people of Iran. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's unfortunate that we have to wind up everything and put it in a capsule of 1 minute. However, I think much has been said, and there's a lot. And what we've heard from almost each and every one of us are the positives about Iran. Unfortunately, I think all these things have not been able to come to the fore. People have not been able to benefit from them. And maybe quite a few people, those who've been fortunate enough to have the opportunity of going to the Islamic Republic of Iran, including myself, are the only ones who can come and say that this and that is happening. But what is there is, as His Excellency Ambassador Nzibo has said, is that there's a lot of negative propaganda against the Islamic Republic of Iran. And this is strategically driven. I'm not saying that the Islamic Republic can counter this by also strategically trying to play the good person in the room. But what I'm saying is that there's quite a lot, and I can say that there's very little that has been done, especially from the government of Iran, trying to showcase what they have. And I think there's a lot that can be done. He talked about 21 students. I think this is supposed to, or was supposed to be a continuous project, so that we have that students coming from Iran learning in Kenya, and there's that inter-exchange of cultures and education, and then people can come and talk about these things. Because I think maybe Dr. Hassan, those who have not interacted with him, cannot know that he's a doctor who studied in Iran. If we had several of such, like now people can be talking so much about the Cuban doctors, but if we had a very good rapport with the Ministry of Health, maybe when we had a crisis that we have lack of doctors, we don't have enough agricultural engineers here, we can get some from Iran, and this is the way to go. And I think they should not shy off. I think it should be purposely driven that we have this to offer to the world. And then I think Kenyans, we are very innovative and we like what is good. We'll go for it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to say the Islamic Revolution is a global socio-cultural achievement, and its core values they run through the core of humanity. So it is just natural that it should be embraced. I'm not saying we should have revolutions, but we should embrace the values of the Islamic Revolution. And because maybe I will not get any other chance to speak, apart from thanking everyone, these sittings should be in future larger and longer, yes, and all inclusive, inshallah.
Thank you. Mine is to tell Muslims all over the world, and especially in Kenya, the 40th anniversary of the Islamic Republic of Iran is not only supposed to be a business of Iran, it is the pride of Islam. I always tell Muslims, the only Islamic republic in this world is Iran. Though we always say that we need to follow other countries, but the only one which prides itself by the word Islamic Republic is Iran. So the 40th anniversary should be celebrated by each and every Muslim in the world. The other issue, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Holy Quran, يُخْرِبُونَ بُيُوتَهُمْ بِأَيْدِيهِمْ وَأَيْدِي الْمُؤْمِنِينَ فَاعْتَبِرُوا يَا أُولِي الْأَبْصَارِ. That Allah tells us that the non-believers, the enemies of Islam, fight themselves using their own hands and also using the believers. They have understood that verse, so they have reversed the verse to us Muslims. So we Muslims are the ones made to fight each other. So what I'm trying to tell Muslims, let us stop the divisions among ourselves. If you are Sunni, stay Sunni, it's good. If you are Shia, stay Sunni, Shia, it's good for you. But let us unite under La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah, and with that unity we'll go very far. To our non-Muslim brothers and sisters, Iran is one of the champions of interfaith in this world, and they are supporting interfaith all over the world. When I left to Iraq, we left with the fathers of the church and padres and even some non-Muslim politicians from this country. We went to Iraq together and we met with Iranians. So let us all support Iran, and I believe supporting Iran, the unity of the Muslims will be realized all over the world. The unity of the world will be analyzed and will be realized by everyone in this world. And I think this is the best we can do. This meeting should continue, and God willing, I believe it will unite Muslims and also unite Muslims and non-Muslims. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Going to the question, is Iran a danger to the international community? I think the answer is both ways. In that it is a danger to the so-called the superpower, because Iran has proven time and time again Iran is an independent country and Iran is not a stooge. Therefore creating an agitation or some rift, so because of their place in the international community. And my second observation is that as much as we would like Kenya to be more of Iran, we also need to pressure our government to look more to Iran like they are doing more to China. And I understand that China and Iranian policy are the same.
Thank you. Going back to the same question, is Iran a danger to the international community? My immediate answer is no. Is it a threat to America? Maybe. But having said that, remember we were told not so long ago that Iraq was having weapons of mass destruction. They were never found. Thank you.
So you pass that. Thank you. So you pass for your comment?
No.
You okay?
You are finished.
Okay, thank you much. Yes, I'll bring this panel discussion to a close. I want to thank each and every person for your participation, and may Allah assist us and pray for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.